All right. So, it's a question that we'd all love to have answered. How to get good sleep naturally. I'm going to come at this from the way that I come at the content that I make, which is through clothing and shoelacing and the effect that those things have on our body mechanics. I'm a very simple person, and I have a very simple approach to the things that we do, and it works. So, if you've seen any of my content, I'm always saying cut the tags out of everything, okay? I'll mention a little bit of explanation as to what that does, because it's important to have a little bit of context if I'm having a video about sleeping. So, if you have a tag in the back of your shirt, it's gonna cause you to subconsciously, this is something I talk about all the time, it's not you doing it, but the sensory nerve endings in your body will be doing this, whether you're aware of it or trying to avoid it or make it happen. And you would never want this to happen. If you have a tag in the back of your shirt, it's gonna cause you to be a little bit like this, okay? There's many reasons to that. Obviously, there's just extra material right there, but also most tags are made out of synthetic material, which our bodies, again, subconsciously, sensory-wise, try to reject. So if there's a tag in the back of your shirt, a lot of times there's also a tag if you have the side seams on the shirts, which I, as I've mentioned before, would recommend not having, but there's a lot of times a tag here. And then the sides of pants, there's a lot of times a tag here, almost always on that left side. And then there's usually a tag in the back of the waistband of the pants also. Could be other places, sometimes here on the hip flexors, that does a lot. The point being, that's a prerequisite before anything here can be done or feel proper. Because the things that I'm saying, if you try them with tags in your clothing, you'll be like, this is so wrong. Well, you should never have tags in your clothing for the sake of your body's natural mechanics. So I also talk a lot about shoelacing because that's the foundation of your body. So throughout your day, you're training a patterning within the clothing that you wear, within the things that we do, the habitual motions that we do throughout our day, depending on what your day looks like. And then there's things like cell phones, which is very common in 2024, which do a lot of damage to our body. I've mentioned some on that too. So you can look at my content to see an actual lacing technique and tying technique of the shoes. I have it in multiple places, but I guess I will go over it just a little bit in this for the sake of everything here kind of being easy to understand as far as sleeping. So when you're lacing them, this bottom one you want to be tucked underneath the very bottom one, and then as they cross, you want the one that's on top of the cross to go over to the outside as it's coming up, okay? And then when you tie them, you want to tie the outside one over the inside and pull it, and then tie the bows from there. This side, since it's the opposite side of your body, you want to do the opposite thing. So this is still underneath, and then as they cross, it's going over to the outside, okay? And you're always tucking into the eyelets as you come up when you're lacing it. And then here, same thing, the outside goes over the inside one when you tie it, so they're even. So from the lacing to the tying, it's kind of opposite. Lacing over to the outside, tying over to the inside. That is essential to know before I talk about any of this, so it is good to mention that. This is just a thin, like, bag, just so I'm not putting my head on the grass for the video. But I'm gonna do kind of some explanation and actually lay down here to show. Okay, so let's say you're tying your shoes and lacing them correctly the way that I show with my lacing and tying technique. And let's say you have all the tags out of your clothing. Ideally, we don't want to be in synthetic clothing when we sleep, and especially not stretchy material. Because if you lay down this is pretty firm, right? The dirt underneath this grass, soil, it's pretty firm. But if you're laying down on a mattress, even if your mattress is relatively firm, it's still got quite a bit of give. And if you're in a stretchy shirt and you lay on your back, the shirt will stretch and it'll put your body into, I talk about all the time, most humans in 2024 are in a chronic state of external rotation, and we're always trying to get internal. That allows us to just be strong and functional and be able to balance, okay? And just work the way our bodies are designed to. So I've mentioned that just with clothing in any kind of video of content that I've made, try to avoid any kind of stretch within anything that you put on your body. It's just very unnatural. So when we're laying down, if you think about posture, right? And standing, this is what my content's all about. We want to be able to get straight, right? We want to get actively internal, and be able to get very rounded, but we also want to get very straight, okay? If you're sleeping with a pillow, right? If I'm standing straight, okay? Look at the position between the back of my head and my spine, right? Pretty much a line, very close. There is a natural curvature inward at the base of your spine, and then out at your thoracic spine, back in for your neck, and then slightly back out once it gets to your head. There's a natural slight curvature, but it's pretty straight, right? In a good internal rotation position. So if we're sleeping and we're trying to mimic like a good straight position, if you have a pillow underneath your head, you notice how I looked when I was standing and how I had you kind of focus on the back of my head versus my spine. When you're sleeping on a pillow, if this is the back of my head and this is my spine, it'll push your head here. And your head can't go forward unless your lower back arcs, right? If I'm sitting, I mean, this isn't a very natural sitting position, but for the sake of looking at my spine, see how everything's pretty well in line? If my head comes forward, I can't hold this position without a lot of tension. What would have to happen if my head came forward is my lower back would have to compensate. So if I'm laying down and there's a pillow under my head, then there's a little bit of an arc in my lower back. There just has to be, because my spine's all connected and my head's forward. And if there's an arc in your lower back, oh, let me put my feet down like I'm laying down, then your feet come out, okay? And that's external. That's the position I'm always showing how to get out of naturally. Because if you remove the pillow and you're just laying flat, then it allows your feet to come in. Because like I was saying, your spine then can be in line. An internally rotated position, I talk about always, is a rounding inward in an active centered position. If I'm laying down and if my legs and my feet are internally rotated, because there's nothing underneath my head to alter the position of my spine, you can watch my feet, right? If there's something underneath my head, if you're laying on a pillow and your feet are out, your shoulders are out, and everything's unactive, it's deactivated. All your muscles in your core are like deactivated. It's like you can't even function. If I were laying here, if my feet come in and now I'm active in an internal rotation position, I can just sit up, okay? If my feet, because there's a pillow under my head, are like this, there's no muscle activation. I can't sit up, right? I would have to have my feet internal, and then I can just come up, right? And be strong in the core. So it might take a little bit of adjustment. It might. And I know what doctors have probably said. I know what your sleep specialist has probably said. I know what your physical therapist has probably said, and your personal trainer and whoever. I know what they've probably said about sleeping with maybe something under your knees and a good pillow and certain things to have your back's natural curvature and whatever they try to say. I know, I get it, I understand where they could be coming from. But like I mentioned with those prerequisites, most people are tying their shoes unevenly to where they can't just like naturally function. Most people can't do just natural motions. Most people can't just bend over. And so even if you've got a doctor, right, who has read the books and he's studied the things that other people have written, they might not even know what it's like to be in a natural, centered, functioning human position, as we would naturally be before clothing discrepancies, shoelacing discrepancies, modern day synthetic materials, all the things that I talk about in my content, right? Tags have to come out. As I showed with the pillow, how it alters the position of your entire spine and puts you into external rotation. In a smaller degree, the tag in the back of your shirt does the same exact thing. So, sleeping in any kind of sleepwear, whether it's pajamas or just whatever you are wearing while you're sleeping, if there's a tag in the back of your anything on your spine, it's going to alter the natural curvature of your spine and put you in what's called a chronic state of external rotation. When I use the word chronic, it's not some life sentence. It's until we do something about it, until we fix the problem, which is just stopping the things which are causing the problem to happen. Because our body works the way it naturally does until we do things externally, like clothing and shoelacing, pillows under the head, man-made materials that then pull it out of its natural alignment, its natural function, and its natural ability to do what it was meant to do on this earth. So ideally, we sleep on something pretty flat, pretty firm, because that's actually really the best for our bodies. Again, doctors will say this and that, doctors will tell you that and this, but can doctors just like function and move and work like normally? Like when I say normally, I mean the way that our bodies are designed, okay? Like, do they have rotation? Can they actually work and move without doing a lot of exercises to try to get to that point? I've mentioned this, but at this point right now, it's the 16th of August, 2024. I don't do any exercise besides walking. That includes stretching or anything like that. None. I'm not saying that that's necessarily right or wrong as far as right now in this video. That's not what I'm saying. But for sake of context, my body functions because I allow it to through the things that I share in my content freely so that other people can also have this ability. So the point being, when I'm talking about sleeping, I really know what I'm talking about. Everybody has their own body shape, their own everything, right? But from the structural, skeletal system and muscular system of human beings, the way that we are designed, what I'm saying is true. Okay? So, one other thing within the clothing that's kind of like a prerequisite before you before this will feel natural to sleep, is I've mentioned this collar seam within clothing, shirts, and yeah, long sleeve, short sleeve shirts. If there's this collar seam, I've shown this before, but where this seam comes down and meets this band that goes around the back of the collar, which then becomes the shoulder seam, I've mentioned and I've shown, see there's just like a slight little slit right there. It's like 1 millimeter with scissors. You just follow directly down from that seam, just do a little tiny slit right there. You can see it in the top of this band, okay? And I've shown and mentioned what that does, but again, for the sake of encapsulating it in this video, that seam doesn't allow your collar to sit flat, and it's normally on the left side of shirts, not always, normally. And that left trap will be overactive because there's a gap there, and sensory wise, not consciously, your body's trying to like find the collar on that side, and it'll drop your right shoulder into external rotation, and your breathing pattern will be changed a lot. So you can't sleep well if you're not breathing, you know, to the best of your body's ability. So external things is what I focus on. The things that are not our body, that are affecting our body, that's one of them. This shirt, I have a few of these shirts right now. I've shown them before. It has just a solid collar seam all the way around, like solid band of material. And I prefer that, and I love that. But these shirts can be okay coming from a place of body mechanics, okay? If you do that little slit. I personally do it. So another thing that I will mention is, just as having something under your head, a pillow, alters the position of your body, I brought a blanket for a demonstration. If you're sleeping, let's say you're sleeping on your back, right? And let's say this blanket's covering me all the way, but just for the sake of the video, it's gonna be like this. If I have my arms on top of this blanket, right, now there's a gap from my arm to my body, right? So naturally, if your arms are laying on top of yourself, well, they kind of wouldn't be, because like you have to activate muscles to pull your hands up here. But when the blanket's there, it fills that gap, but it's putting you in a very unnatural position. Because if the blanket's not there, you can't hold this position without being like conscious of activating your muscles, or else your arms will just fall off, and you're not even going to sit like this very comfortably, because yeah, point being, if there's something between where your body would naturally be resting on itself, right, my lower back, I felt it when I was doing that, will have to arc a little bit, because adding that gap wraps your scapula around a little bit in a way that's unnatural, because there's something between here, and your breathing pattern changes so much. Same thing if you have, like, you're sleeping and you kind of tuck yourself in and put the blanket underneath you in any place, right? If it's underneath my knees, for example, my back, I'm still laying with the hands like this, but my back will be altered, right? Even if it's just slightly, we sleep for somewhere around 8 hours. 8 full hours. Let's say you're in the same position all night. Being in an unnatural position for 8 hours straight and just breathing through it and breathing through it and breathing through it, you're training a patterning, and you're training something that's unnatural. So there might be this question that people are asking themselves, well, what about if you sleep on your side? I do. And I haven't slept with a pillow for months, probably 6 months, probably. And when I sleep on my side, again, everybody has their own body shape and size and everything, but I don't know. I mean, it works. I don't really have an explanation as of right now on how, like, how it's healthy, but what I have is my own personal body's function. And I've been sleeping with no pillow, like I said, for probably about 6 months. I don't know for sure, but it's been at least many months, probably 6. So I don't wake up sore anymore. I used to wake up and feel like I had to like stretch and like try to move normally before I could go on through my day. And I just wake up and I go. Yeah, a lot of misconceptions, and that's what most all my content is just talking about the misconceptions, because even though doctors are usually trying to help, sleep specialists, like I mentioned, physical therapists, and whoever it is, they're normally actually trying to help. But if they don't know what it actually means to be in a centered, natural, functioning, like human position that we would just naturally be in, then they can't, regardless of how much they're trying to really help, they can't even give proper advice. Okay? So, my name is Evan Strong. I make a lot of content, and I'm going to continue to make a lot more on things like this. My focus and the things that I center things around are the shoelacing and tying and clothing, the discrepancies within seams, as I've shown in this, tags, and things left to right within clothing. There's a bee on my leg. I got stung by 2 bees within the past week, so that's why I'm a little bit, normally I don't care, but I'm actually a little bit nervous if I'm being real. So yeah, try those things, check out the bee. I got more content to come. It's August 16th, 2024. I'm actually nervous. I'm gonna keep this rolling for a sec because there's a bee on my knee. So yeah, like I say with some things though, there might be a little bit of an adjustment period, because I talk about all the time that term of training a patterning. If we are stuck, quote unquote, in a pattern because we've been doing things that, don't go in my shoe, B, that have put our bodies in a position for like years, you know, stemming with the shoe tying. If you've been tying your shoes, as I did from the time I started tying shoes until last year when I was 24 years old, then your muscles and your bones and everything will grow in an uncentered position. So it might take a little bit of an adjustment period. So when I talk about stuff and it seems like, hey, Evan, I tried this and it didn't feel comfortable, that's something really good to be sure and say, is it could take a little bit of an adjustment period depending on where you're coming from and how ingrained the patterning is, which we can get out of. Everyone has their own specific situations, but these patternings are not lifelong permanent, and they're actually quite easy to get out of, and that's what I show. So thank you. This bee's on the tip of my toe. Chew. Okay. I want to try to cover for sure everything within sleeping, so this can be a solid, this is all you would probably, at least as far as an introduction to this, need to know after watching this video. Oh, one thing also, I've kind of shown how to put socks on, because you don't ever want anything putting you into external rotation. So I've shown when you put your socks on, you almost want to twist them outward, slight, very slight. If you sleep in socks, or well, this goes for any time you have socks on, you almost want to twist them outward, just very, very slight as you put them on, because see what my toes going in? Yeah, you can follow the seams up. If you're wearing pants while you sleep rather than shorts, you don't want the tops of your pants touching your feet, because sensory wise it will potentially like push your feet away from you, plantar flex them, which kind of puts you into external rotation. Same with any long sleeves. You want them off of your hands to be active, or else it kind of deactivates your upper body. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, with anything I mentioned with clothing, ideally we have our clothing fit pretty well for our own body. Okay, shoulder seams where they should be, pants decently snug around our waist. I've done a video on anyway, if you have pants with a drawstring, you don't want to be tying it to where it's twisting your hips one way or the other. You want to tie an even drawstring in your like pajama pants, for example, or gym shorts, or whatever it is you're wearing to bed. Ideally 100% materials, natural ones that are not stretchy. And if there's, like I mentioned with tags in the back, if your drawstring inside of your pants is sewn in the back, that'll just pull your hips. Because even if you're a pretty still sleeper, you still move around probably at least a little bit, and some people move a lot in their sleep. And if your drawstring within your pants is sewn in anywhere, it's generally in the back, it'll just pull on your hips as you move in the bed. So, and as I've mentioned a lot, your hips are the exact center of like your lower body flexion and your upper body. Everything hinges at the hips. So anytime your hips twist, everything is affected. So, yes. Okay. Try to sleep with no pillow, something decently firm. Try to sleep clothing wise and bedding wise, if you can, in natural materials that are not slippery or stretchy. Okay, that's what I'm going to cover in this video. As I've mentioned, I really try not to talk about things that I don't understand well. So, as backward as a lot of the things that I say in this video might sound, I really do understand natural human body function. Okay, I really do understand evenness left to right, natural balance, natural rotation, and I do the things that I show. Okay, when I'm making videos, it's because I'm doing these things and I'm just sharing them. So regardless of if you're a specialist or what your specialist told you or said, I know this stuff well. All right, I've got more content to come. Stick around. Thank you. It's gonna be awesome.